the 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development Goals. Indonesian companies get recognized for their sustainable business practices. Here's 10 tips of living sustainably. Well, sustainable this, sustainable that, but what is it actually? Well, I'd like to preface my talk by saying that I'm not an anti-sustainability, quite the opposite actually. I'm just a confused believer who is in search of a better way for myself to understand and embody the concept of sustainability. And if I'm lucky, take some of you along with me in the journey. When was the first time you heard of the word sustainability? Well, for me, it was during my bachelor study. I was part of a marketing team of a social entrepreneur community. Back then, we were developing a product that used recycled materials. So during my research, that's when I first stumbled upon the word sustainability. That's when I learned that being sustainable, meaning taking care of not only the profit, but also the people and the planet. So now, when we Google search the word sustainability, it has more results than if we search for Titanic, for example, or the word globalization. But it's still half of BTS results. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that the term sustainability is popular, especially in the recent years. If we look to when the word sustainability first used or introduced, it actually dated back to the 18th century. Mr. Hans Carl von Carlowitz, who has the forest management, used the word nachhaltigheid, which I hope I pronounced it right, which translated to sustainability in English. He uses that word to describe his project about forest principle to ensure that there will always be wood available. And one of them was through replanting one for every 3 chopped down. Fast forward to the 20th century, the term sustainable development arguably first appeared in an official document of the International Union for Conservation of Nature in 1969, which was signed by 33 African countries. And 3 years later, in a study about Earth's carrying capacity entitled The Limits to Growth, its author also touched on the importance of sustainable ecological and economic stability. The momentum kicked in actually in 1987 when sustainable development was first formally defined in the Brundtland Report, also called Our Common Future, by the World Commission on Environment and Development, as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. John Elkington in 1994 made sustainability perhaps more practical by introducing the well-known triple bottom line or the people, planet, profit framework. Until in 2015, the UN really made it globally acknowledged by setting the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Now, the question is, how many of us do actually understand this term? For me, one of the indicators of one level of understanding is the ability to explain it in a simple and concise way to others. And there, ladies and gentlemen, lies my problem that brought me to this talk. So 2 years prior, I was a project officer working on a sustainable tourism destination development in one of rural area of Indonesia, to be exact in Wakatobi in Southeast Sulawesi. And since it's an island region, detached from the main island of Sulawesi, around 97% of its area is water. So the people there, they really dependent on the water to make their living out of those waters. So for example, through fishing, seaweed farming, as well as inter-island trading. So the goal of my team back then was to get buy-ins from local stakeholders, from the small hotel owners, from village administration, from tourism communities, to make a shift towards a more sustainable operations. So in my head at that time, I was like, okay, so how could I explain about carbon emissions, about global warming, and about climate crisis, and how tourism activities are in fact one of the major contributors to these issues? And then how could I explain and how could I make them understand that we should manage a tour program that benefits the local community without compromising the environment nor the local culture? So I thought it was, oh man, this will be a challenge for me to do. But I'm glad I was wrong. The more time I spent talking to the local people, the villagers, the elders of the Adat or the customary group, the Bajo or the Sea Gypsies communities, local small business owners, the more I realized that they have actually implemented some, if not most, of sustainability concepts. Speaking of sustainable sourcing, for example, the hotel owners get their produce most of the time from their local suppliers. The fish from the oceans, just at the back of their house, the cassava from their own or the neighbor's farm, and then the kelor or the moringa leaves for the vegetables from their front yards. So it's very convenient and it's very sustainable as well. And at the community level, for example, people have and still apply the knowledge, tradition, norms that are indigenous to the community and being passed on from generation to the generations, or what we call the local wisdom. Sasi, for example, as you can see now on the screen, is a customary law shared by Sea communities in eastern part of Indonesia that refers to the prohibition of extracting or making use of the land and the sea resources in certain area or in a certain period of time. And which is, the aim is of course to conserve the biodiversity, to conserve the nature. And this tradition has existed and been respected from generation to generations, including in Wakatobi. You know what? I will let my good friend Uli, who's also a local tour guide in Wakatobi, to share her village version of Sasi.
Hello, my name is Ode Mulyana and I'm from Wakatobi. I would like to share about a local tradition in Lia villages called Laloa Borona. Laloa means passing through, and Borona is the local name for baronang fish or rabbit fish. So this tradition refers to the time where villagers will capture the Borona fish. However, it is only done within the time span of 3 days in a month, for 3 months only in a year. It is between August and October. The elders would look at the position of the moon to decide when is the best time to gather the fish from their seru, which is a traditional fish trap, using network of nets placed strategically in the sea where the Borona would pass through. This wisdom has been passed down from generation to generation, so the people in Lia's pattern of consuming this fish by following natural flow of the sea.
From that experience on the field, I truly believe in harnessing the power of local wisdom to understand and communicate sustainability better. The knowledge and traditions came from that particular area or community. It's been passed down generation from generation because it's in line with their culture, their value systems. Therefore, they will most likely accept the idea. And it will be easily understandable as well because these wisdoms are close to them, to us, so that we can relate to the ideas more easily as well. And I think the best thing about the local wisdom is that they are available, they already exist, and can be found anywhere across the globe. For sure, technology and innovation can and should enhance them. Yeah, we don't need to reinvent anything from zero. I would like to end my talk with another story from Wakatobi. So this picture was taken from one of my field assessments in the Gadjah village. Before the era of SPF to protect our skin from the UVA and UVB, Gadjah people have actually been using that white natural powder that's on my face to protect their skin whenever they go out into the sea to look for food. And I talked to one of the youths in the village and asked how the product or the powder was actually made. And he told us that it was made from ground rice that sometimes also mixed with some root plants like turmeric, for example, which makes sense because now like there are plenty of skincares, very famous and high-end products that are using rice water also as one of their ingredients. But then for my friend who was also there at that time, she asked, wait a minute, but what about the old times when the Gadjah village were actually living on the sea with very less limited access to the land like right now? Like, wouldn't it be hard for you to source the rice to make that powder? So in my heart, I was like, Very sharp thinking. So the guy, poor guy, was there. He's also flustered by the questions. So instead, he took us to his grandma's house. So there we chatted and then found out that back then they utilized the shells of the clams that they caught from the sea. And the shells first needed to be roasted on an open fire to make them softer and easier to be smashed into powder. So the moral of the story is, if you, by you, it's including me as well, want to know more about the local wisdom, about how people live in harmony with nature, living sustainably, should go ask our friend Nanny, huh?